While I respect the United Teachers of Dade, I disagree with them in their assessment that the ballot box is the only mechanism to solve the unacceptable Florida policy of high-stakes testing. I would agree with the superintendent from last month's school board meeting that legal action must not be taken off the table. As we all know, the Florida legislature does not start reading bills until March, so you have this whole time from now until March or May that they will not make any decisions relative to education policy bills. So we have a problem. We have a full year that nothing is being done to correct their mistakes. Now we know also, besides the fact that the timing is horrible, that the Florida Department of Education has made some serious errors in judgment, and they need to be called on it. The fact that the air test, which is a $220 million contract that they signed with a practice test that was done for SAGE program in Utah, in which they gave to Florida as a practice test, is unacceptable. So we have two different organizations that need to really be strongly brought to task as it relates to the high stakes testing, both the legislature and the Florida Department of Education. And that is not just in the ballot box. So we must also, and I really ask that this board considers legal action. This needs to stop. The EOCs that the superintendent talked about, I believe that the Florida legislature, their statute is, I think, 1003.41, they're already in violation of it. So it bears, no one can understand why in the world they would demand something that they have not funded, and they have no possibility of making it an efficient, effective, and across-the-board policy for ELL students in particular. We have a very diverse population in Miami-Dade, in all of Florida. Why they would take a Utah test and bring it here is, unconscionable. I think there's also other issues that when we talk about the air test and we talk about the issues that many of you have spoken today, transparency, process does matter. I'm so glad that that word was brought up. In 2010, January of 2010, the Florida Department of Education decided to apply for Race to the Top funding, where it said in Race to the Top that high stakes testing was mandated as well as Common Core. In June of 2010, the United Teachers of Dade, along with the school board, signed Race to the Top with mandated Common Core and high-stakes testing. In July of 2010, the Common Core standards were finished. So all of this was done prior to all this information being in front of the Florida Department of Education and the Miami-Dade County School Board. I ask you to please reconsider all these actions and also not to take legal action off the table. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Regalado?
No, just to a point to the speaker that I think it's important because when we talk about the decisions that were made specifically to Race to the Top, I always have to explain to people that coming off SB 6, many of us were not excited about merit pay and are still not excited about merit pay. However, Governor Rick Scott cut our educational budget by $1.2 billion. Three of us were sitting in Tallahassee when that budget was handed down. And even though this district had not participated in the first round of Race to the Top, we had to choose between firing 221 teachers or participating in Race to the Top. I want you to know that it was a very difficult decision and one that we all discussed at length, but we could not fire 221 teachers. Now we're trying to do our best, but the fact that this district agreed to Race to the Top, which was a 4-year program that came with federal funding that allowed us to maintain our teachers employed while the state government shrank our funds for 2 years in a row, did not mean that we agreed with merit pay as it was passed at the state legislature. What happened at the state level is that they took the Race to the Top application, they passed it as a bill without any funding. It was an unfunded mandate that is currently still costing this district money. So I understand your frustration, but understand that they were not decisions that were made either lightly by this board or without education of the consequences. We had very few choices at that moment, and this board decided that we were going to do everything in our power to ensure that we could keep our teachers in our classrooms.
Thank you, thank you, Ms. Regalado. Anything